All right, good Friday morning. I want to share real briefly with you. There's some homework you have with this devotion today, so I'm going to be really short. In the description, there is a link to a video on YouTube. It is called "God with Us," and as we start December, um, I can't think of any better way to start than to be reminded of the concept of Emmanuel, God with us. And this is something that I've shared before, but um, you know it, this concept of God being with us flies in the face of all of this misconception of God just kind of leaving us on our own, or God not being interested in having a relationship with us. Almost like this deist thought of God just kind of set the wheels in motion and let it go. It's this incredible prophecy from the Old Testament that uses this word for the coming Messiah that is the reason we celebrate at Christmas. And so in Isaiah 7:14, it says, "Therefore the Lord himself will give you a sign. Behold, the virgin shall conceive and bear a son, and shall call his name Emmanuel." And so this prophecy is for a future sign that will be born of the virgin, and the name will be Emmanuel. And so we talked about this before. We've mentioned this many times, and all throughout Christmas and different times. But names in the Old Testament mean a lot more than names today. A lot of folks go in the baby book, the book of baby names, and they look at names, and they more care about, does the name sound okay? Does it sound important? Or do I like how it sounds? Or do I like how it's spelled? Or that's not how they named people. Really throughout history, is they named people because the names meant something. Sometimes we go back and look at what our names mean, and you're like, huh, is that really me? You never know. So what does that name Emmanuel mean? We mentioned it earlier. All those Christmas plays that we've watched all throughout history, Emmanuel, God with us. We can recite those over and over. I can think back to growing up. There was a wonderful man in the church I grew up in named Noah, who was the narrator every year. And I love to hear him talk and hear him say that. But Emmanuel is this Old Testament name that means God with us. And Isaiah, the name signified God's salvation and judgment for Judah. The original fulfillment of the Emmanuel prophecy would bring judgment on them. And in Matthew 22, Isaiah's prophecy is fulfilled through the miraculous conception of Jesus Christ. And so Christmas is the day of Emmanuel. It's the day where we're reminded that God is with us. The one we celebrate this season is called Emmanuel because he is continually with us. He came to earth for us. For Jesus, he realized that the corruption of man couldn't be undone except simply he had to die. And so he was immortal. He was the Son of the Father. He wasn't able to die. And so for this reason, it says in John 1:14, he became flesh and dwelt among us. Jesus became man. He became, as the song, as one Christmas song that I love says, that he was a baby born to die. And through his death, sin was defeated, and certainly by the grace of the resurrection, that corruption ceases. And so the Christmas story isn't about a God who's ever been distant. Matter of fact, it's a God who has always been working in our midst. In the Old Testament, we see God working in a people that are set apart for their good and his glory. And in the New Testament, we see a God with us in the life of Jesus Christ. And so I just want to remind you of that this morning, that God sent a wonderful promise for us. And at Christmas, let us remember that. There's so much more I want to mention about this, and I'm going to mention it over the next few weeks as we work into Christmas and are reminded about Christmas. But take a minute, go watch this video. It's 3 minutes long. It's from a sermon that Charles Spurgeon did entitled God with Us. I hope you all have a wonderful Friday. May God bless you. And remember, the reason for the season, God with us. May God bless.